Fighting games. One of the most popular genres of all time. You ask anyone who's played a video game, they'd probably know Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, maybe even Tekken. During the 90s, fighting games were at a huge peak of popularity. Street Fighter 2 had come out at the start of the decade, and the first Mortal Kombat game just 1 year later. There were plenty of other fantastic fighting games during this period, like Tekken, Marvel vs. Capcom, and the one this video is going to talk about. When you think of these old fighting games, your mind goes to all these iconic titles, and probably the arcade cabinets they were played on. For playing them at your home, your mind probably goes to like the Super Nintendo, maybe the PlayStation 1, Sega Genesis, but this game wasn't on any of those consoles. It was on the N64. I'm just fucking with you, it's not Killer Instinct. But what I'm fucking around with is telling you to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. And while you're down there, why don't you combo that by giving this video a like, as well as leaving a comment on if you've ever played this game, or any other obscure fighting game you may know of. Anyways, obligatory YouTuber plug out of the way, let's get to the real shit. The year is 1998. You've just gotten back from Blockbuster after seeing this dude on the cover art for the game because your mom didn't let you rent Mortal Kombat Trilogy, but you wanted to play a fighting game on your Nintendo 64. You boot it up, and you see this. I want to point out, I didn't do any editing to this is just how the intro was. It really wanted to drive home you could defend yourself with speed, skill, and power on a cube in hell? Okay, that intro wasn't amazing, but then you get to the character select and it's like, ooh, he jamming. The plot of the game is basically all the fighters are participating in a contest to see who the special one is? I'll be honest, there's pretty much no lore in this game, and the manual has pretty much no information outside the mechanics of the game. But some of the characters do have a backstory, namely the ones that are already unlocked, at least according to a wiki page I found, which I'll just base all my stuff on because it's the only thing I could find about story in this game. The base roster consists of 9 characters, while 5 are unlockable for a total of 14. Let's go over them quickly. Also, for some reason, every single character has the same animation during the character select screen, but it was not a huge thing in this game if it's not obvious. First you got the staple Ryu ripoff Ryuji. They weren't being subtle, were they? Who is from Japan, who is trying to find the tournament organizer to find his grandfather, who is rumored to try and sneak into the competition. He's not the organizer, he just wants to enter it, I guess. Next up is Abdul from Mongolia, who is a street performer who wants to buy back a cow he had to sell for money. Moving on to one of the Dukes of Hazzard, we have Tomahawk, who's a professional wrestler from the USA, who wants to make a new wrestling organization and only enter the tournament for wealth and fame. Mei Ling is a child prodigy fighter from China, but instead of fighting, he became an idol because he was musically talented. Ninja is a ninja from Japan. That's his whole character. Pierre is a clown from France who's also an acrobat who left the circus to become a freelance acrobat, which I guess is a thing. And he only entered because he wanted to promote himself. Leon is from Spain, is basically the obligatory rival character to Ryuji. It's pretty much the Ken of this game, but except he's Spanish instead of American. Valerie is from Germany and the child of the tournament organizer, who they kept a secret, so she's there so that she can forcefully make him acknowledge her as his successor. Bob is an army man from Brazil, but he really hated being in war and killing, but he fucking loves fighting, so he became a sports person instead. And that's all the base roster characters. There's 5 unlockable characters, as I said, who barely have much lore to them. Boro is just the boss you fight at the end of any single player run, and there's not much else to them except that they're from Switzerland. Then you have Joker, who's a jester thing from Russia. He's also Pierre's brother and just the best character in the game that you unlock by beating survival mode, which requires you to fight and win against 100 computers in a row without losing. And yes, it's absurd as that sounds. You also have Master from Japan, which requires you to complete Master Mode. What a name. It's basically a wheel that spins where you either have to fight Master or Joker, and defeating Master gives you a special combo move for your character, while Joker is just kind of a nuisance, and there's 12 total fights you have to win without losing in order to get all your skills you unlock. And we have this game's Mokujin ripoff for Robert. except he doesn't copy other characters, he's just the training dummy and also really bad. It basically looks like Mokujin, but also having the properties of Danabiki. And if you're really curious, the training dummy is from Germany for some reason. And lastly, we got Usi, baby, this bit's a motherfucking cow! The cow could be from anywhere, but they decided to make her from Hong Kong for some reason. And how do you unlock him? By playing rodeo mode. This throws you into a match against Usi where you don't actually do damage, but have to survive in the ring with them for as long as possible. And you need to last at least a minute to unlock Usi. And he's so fucking BM, look at us, he's dancing on him! And that's the roster. It's really small, but each character has a pretty decent balance actually, except for Robert. Robert's just bad on purpose, and Joke is probably a little overtuned. But outside of that, you could really pick whoever you wanted and do decent enough. Now let's get to the real meat, the mechanics. Fighter's Destiny isn't a regular fighter. Instead, it's a mixture of Street Fighter, Tekken, Soul Calibur, Super Smash Bros, and WCW vs NWO, or any other random N64 game you can think of. So, Fighter's Destiny is basically a huge melting pot of mechanics. It isn't a traditional hit the opponent until they die fighting game. Instead, you have to score 7 points to win the match, and each round resets after you score a point. There are 6 different ways to get a point, and each one gives a different amount of points. The first way is a ring out, which is knocking your opponent off the stage. Every stage is pretty much a giant platform that you can knock your opponent off of. A ring out is just worth 1 point. The other 1 point value is win by judge. This is pretty much the game's version of a timeout and will award the win to whoever did the most damage. You see, in Fighter's Destiny, your health is actually pretty much more of a stamina bar, and you don't actually lose if it hits 0. Instead, you enter a dizzy state that strips you of your ability to attack, and can only move, jump, and duck. It also makes you unable to escape out of throws. Your health actually recovers over time naturally, and each character has a different rate of recovery. So a judge victory is basically the game's version of a timeout win. If you successfully land a throw, which can be escaped with a quick time event, you get 2 points. Certain attacks can cause a knockdown, and if you successfully land one of these, you get 3 points. Certain moves can only give a knockdown effect if the opponent is stunned, while others work regardless of health or status. There is also a moveset of counters that work on any move, and if you ever land one, you get 3 points. And the last way to earn a point is with a special attack, which nets you a whole whopping 4 points, baby. These moves can be done when the opponent is stunned, and it's essentially a super. There are a few characters that can use their specials even when the opponent isn't stunned, though they can always be dodged in most cases. Funnily enough, there are also taunts in the game called mental attacks, which don't actually do anything in the game. But they do cause the controller of the opponent to rumble violently. But you also need to have like the Rumble Pack plugged in because this is still an N64 game, and that's the overall mechanics of Fighter's Destiny. It's an incredibly unique use of mechanics that we've never really seen before and haven't really ever been seen since. Well, unless you count the second one, but we'll get to that later. It's a lot more inspired by kind of more of a martial arts deal rather than just regular fighting games. You get less complication in favor of more kind of technical mental gameplay, and that gameplay is fun as hell. The soundtrack is poppin', and there's a decent bit to do in the game between all the modes. Some of the unlockables are a bit obnoxious, and to unlock a full character's moveset, you do have to put a lot of effort in since you have to beat Master Mode with them. But that's where game comes in, baby! Still, Fighter's Destiny is the biggest underrated gem of maybe not just fighting games, but the entire Nintendo 64 era. It's a bit simplistic compared to technical Street Fighter, and you're not going to be watching and playing movies like you're in a Marvel combo, but you are going to be having a damn good time with Fighter's Destiny. You can use pretty much any character in the game, except Robert, and do well enough that you can win with pretty much anyone. Winning through different ways makes every match unique as you work to get 7 points. Games can go by fast so you can get a lot in. Riskier moves give you more points, while safer options net you less, but are more consistent, so there's a balance to it all. Fighter's Destiny is probably the most unique fighting game out there. Most fighting games follow a similar formula to some degree, but no game has really innovated the fighting game genre in a way like Fighter's Destiny did, and it's a shame it went the round of obscurity as opposed to bringing more people into the genre. Perhaps if it didn't release during a time of oversaturation of the market, and during the height of some of the most popular fighting games of all time, it would have signed a bit more. But that's not the reality, and the game had only sold about 1,800 copies in North America. It did have pretty good reviews overall, about 80% positive. Many outlets called it one of the best fighting games on the Nintendo 64, and one of the most original in a time where everyone was trying to copy the success of Street Fighter. It's a sad ending to a story of a game that tried something new and was really good at what it did. The game did actually receive a sequel, but it was looked down upon a much more, with it barely breaking past 50 on Metacritic. After the second game, Fighter's Destiny fully faded into obscurity. As for Genki, they haven't really done anything since 2017 with the release of a mobile game that shut down that same year, and that's the last bit of info on them I could find. All that being said, Fighters Destiny is a game that deserves acknowledgement in a world loaded with forgotten gems of the past. There's not much out there online about this game, and I'd love for that to change. Fighters Destiny was perhaps too ahead of its time, buried in the fighting games of the 90s. Anyways, I've been JPEG, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you should follow your destiny and click that subscribe button, and do leave a like and comment below on what you think about Fighters Destiny, or if there's any other obscure fighting games you wish got more love. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.